everyone. Welcome. My name is Kitty Douglas, and I am president of BigTent USA. At BigTent, we are steadfast in our commitment to defending our democratic values, the Constitution, and the rule of law. Our goal is to empower you with facts and calls to action so you can become a stronger, more effective advocate for our country. Next week on June 17th, Evan Osnos, New York staff writer and author of the aptly named bestseller, The Have and Have-Yots, will dive into how the ultra-wealthy are warping American political and social life. So I hope you'll join us then. Our call to action tonight is to learn how to use the Epstein database with Camaron Stevenson and Thorian AI's co-founder, Josh Levine. Starting us off tonight is going to be Cam and Josh and the Epstein database and why it is so important for us all to learn how to use it so we can assist lawyers like Norm and journalists like Cam and Nina in their pursuit of justice and truth. We are thrilled to welcome back to BigTent the one and only Ambassador Norm Eisen, Courier's Nina Burleigh and Camaron Stevenson, and for the first time, Josh Levine. Ambassador Norm Eisen is a co-founder and board member of Democracy Defenders Action, which has been helping lead the successful national court fights against the Trump administration, securing multiple landmark orders against its authoritarian moves. His work in the courts of law is matched by his efforts in the court of opinion, and he is the co-founder and publisher of The Contrarian. Nina Burleigh is a journalist, best-selling author, documentary producer, and publisher of a Substack on politics called American Freakshow, which I highly recommend. A contributing editor at the New Republic and frequent contributor to the New York Times and New York Magazine. She's the author of 8 books on an array of topics, including archaeological, forgery, Amanda Knox in Italy, and the Trump women. Camaron Stevenson is a national correspondent for Courier Newsroom and publisher of another excellent Substack, Below the Beltway. A veteran political journalist, he spent more than a decade reporting in Phoenix and served as the founding editor-in-chief political correspondent of the Copper Courier. His reporting focuses on politics, policy, and the forces shaping American democracy at the national and local levels. Josh Levine is a multi-time entrepreneur building at the nexus of AI, public policy, and the future of data. He is now building Thorian AI, which specializes in data processing, extraction, and automation building across massive multimodal databases. Thorian serves as a data backbone for local government, permitting process, that does sound massive, state and federal compliance processes, even more massive, and complex grant applications management, while keeping costs low. So again, we're switching things up, and I'm going to turn the call over to Camaron and Josh to walk us through the Epstein database and how to use it. Cam and Josh, thanks for joining BigTent.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Kitty. Thank you, BigTent. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I'm Camaron Stevenson, like Kitty said, and Josh Levine. He is the incredible half brain and co-founder of Thorian, who was able to create this incredible journalistic tool that we have been able to utilize extensively. If you're familiar, the government released over 3 million pages of its investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, known as the Epstein files. It's a lot to cover, and there's so much in there that, personally, I think that they released that much to overwhelm people so that they could never find everything in there. And with the help of modern technology, and Josh can kind of explain a little bit more how it works, we are able to find things at a much more rapid pace than the Trump administration would like us to be able to.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cam. Fundamentally, the act of Congress that led to the release of the Epstein files mandated and required that all of the files be released in a searchable format. And I think we can all agree that the format that they were released in terms of multiple different packages of files that are named in a strange way, that are not grouped in any coherent way, that are not particularly well searched, that are not particularly well extracted, doesn't necessarily live up to the spirit of the law. as it was constructed. And so one of the challenges with the data, the way that it was constructed, is that it's so large and so multifaceted that it was very difficult to parse through all of that information with traditional means alone. So through a combination of machine learning, topic modeling, large language model use, agentic use. So basically having a number of AI agents crawl through the data multiple times across a specified context. We're able to get more information out of the Epstein files than I believe any other public resource available on the internet right now. And the purpose of this project is to make that information available to good people like yourself and to journalists like him and the Courier team so that we can investigate and report on what's inside those files.
Yeah. Now, I'd like to show an example of some investigative work we've done. Just as a little background, I have been covering the Epstein files for Courier Newsroom for the past year and a half about. I covered pretty extensively the Trump administration's attempt to prevent them from being released. As far as I know, I created the first database of the original 30,000 document drop that the government released back in November. It was an equally terrible drop of information. It was hard to find, hard to search through, and that database was able to help people do a lot of really important work. And now with the help of this new database with all of the files in it, we're able to do a lot of things that I didn't think would be possible at first. Very simple things that should be available to everyone, and now I'm glad that they are through the database we've created. Most recently, I have begun looking into, I describe it as kind of a meta-relevant aspect of the Epstein files. Once Trump took office, people immediately were calling for him to release the files. And his administration was working behind the scenes to redact his name, to stall their release, to find blackmail they could use against his political opponents. And this was all happening behind the scenes, right? It was all happening within the administration, in the Department of Justice, and we caught whispers of it. All of the documentation, all of their internal correspondence has been released as part of the Epstein files. They may not have realized this when they were communicating in 2025. When they were emailing each other, when Kash Patel was emailing his FBI head at the Southern District of New York, he probably didn't realize that the email he was typing in March 2025 would be part of the Epstein files. But it was. And so I've been searching through using our database, specifically documents from the year 2025. And what I found a few weeks ago was that FBI Director Kash Patel, he assigned a group of agents in New York to determine whether or not they could charge anyone else with a crime based on an extremely narrow scope. I calculated it to about 7% of the total files. And in the scope that he internally told his agents to look into was only images and photos, or images and videos, and only from specific parts of the investigation. For example, this analysis where they determined that they couldn't prosecute anyone, they didn't use any surveillance footage of any of Epstein's properties. They also didn't use any written witness testimony. The only witness testimony they used was on-camera interviews with the Palm Beach Police Department from the 2006-2008 investigation. Kash Patel then used this analysis of that, again, that very narrow scope, didn't look at financial documents, didn't look at emails, didn't look at anything else. And he used the same language in this internal analysis for the public memo where he announced that he was closing the case. And I was able to look through, compare, and analyze these documents. And based on everything we found, he essentially found a way to close it without investigating Trump, without investigating Leon Black, Les Wexner, any people who were Epstein's clients or anyone implicated. Sorry, I'm going to go through I know there's a bunch of questions. I ran through that a little quick. That was just an example of some of the things we've been able to find. We also have been able to scour and find very sensitive financial documents that actually show a line of money laundering that Epstein did, where he used some of his employees, like Darren Indyke and Richard Kahn, to launder money through a series of banks and then use it to pay women, to pay, foreign, foreign people in Eastern Europe through sanctioned banks. And all of this is very, very irrefutable evidence. It's just a matter of having a government in control that will actually investigate these. Here, sorry, I can go through. Josh, you want to add anything before I start going through the questions?
So I guess Cam depends on how you like to structure it. I could walk through the platform now and then we could hit questions, or do you want to answer questions first? Like what do you
Yeah,
prefer?
actually, I probably got ahead of myself. Let's go. Let's go through the platform. I'm sorry.
All good, all good. Yeah. All right, so I'll share my screen and um walk y'all through the data set. So this is publicly available. It's at search.epsteincoverup.us, and this is the database where we have made all 1.24 million Epstein files, 3 million plus pages of documentation available to search by the public. There are a number of different ways to use this platform. Our hope is that people on this call who feel inspired to check this stuff out will run some searches of their own, do some investigation, and if they see something interesting, you can leave a tip for Cam and the Courier team right here on this tips page. That helps us make sure that the most important stories continue to be told about the Epstein files. There are a lot of stories that have not yet been told yet. So you can see here we have, a couple of suggested searches, but you don't have to use those. We can do a text search. Let's say Leon Black. I was thinking about Leon Black earlier today. This is one of the things that when you work on the Epstein files, you end up thinking about Leon Black at moments when you would prefer not to be. But here we have I have to log in. Shoot. My bad. Apologies. I thought I had already logged in beforehand, but now I'm logged into my own personal account. We ask that people log in because it helps with security of the data set. You can run one or two searches without logging in. You can see we have 1,000 pages, 19,347 results just for Leon Black. We have a chronological search here at the top. The dates and years that are more yellow than others are the ones where there's a little bit more heat. So you can see that the engagements between Epstein and Leon Black really peaked in 2014. And you can see here all of the results. So this is financial gifts record for Leon Black in 2015. We have a small description of what's going on, narrated. We can click on this and we can see here are some gifts that have been noted. And these are the text of the email. Everything is coming directly from a DOJ source. So we'll click on this. We can actually pull up this exact document here from the Department of Justice website. This makes sure that there are no hallucinations, that we are only showing exactly the information that is in the Department of Justice data set. We started pulling the Epstein files from the beginning of the very first big drop of information, which means that we have versions of the files internally to us that are much more descriptive than the ones that exist right now. So, for example, Cam mentioned some sensitive financial information that is available. Some of that information was available in an unredacted form in the original drop. So that means it is public information. It was released to the public, and yet it has now been redacted. We have the original versions of those files, and the summaries that you'll see of the information will show a summary of the information in the most unredacted version, that you'll only be able to access the current version of the files on the website. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that. I know I'm going quickly. We also have internally an OCR, which is basically a way to extract information out of images and PDFs. We have a very advanced OCR at Thorian, which allowed us to go back through and rerun a lot of big documents in order to extract even more information out of every individual file. So let's say we're doing this search about Leon Black, and we have this document here. This is interesting to me. I'm going to save it so we can add it. We can bookmark this document. We can add it to a list. And what this does is this lets us keep interesting files straight so that we're not losing them as we pour through a number of different files. Now, one thing that can be very interesting here is we have Black Family Partners LP. Let's say I want to learn a little bit more about Black Family Partners LP. We can actually go back to the data set and do AI discovery. This is our newest feature. So we have a locally hosted large language model here that is crawling over the Epstein files. So this is information that is not being exposed to OpenAI or any of the big model providers. We can ask a question. We will search the corpus and provide an answer that is descriptive and based in, again, the primary documents of the Epstein files. So we can ask this question. Usually we'll get a hit within, a few seconds here.
Yeah, while that's loading, I can go through and answer some of these questions. Um, Robin asked if we work with Ellie Leonard, the author of Panicked Writer on Substack. I read her work. I haven't worked with her in any capacity, but she'd be a fantastic person to connect with. Let's see. James is asking why paid media outlets aren't doing their job and reporting on the Epstein files. Uh, you're preaching to the choir. I would say it's a combination of three things. One, a lot of day-to-day reporters are, I don't blame the on-the-ground reporters. They're my people, and I know what they're going through. They're overworked and underpaid. They're expected to turn a story every day, and they're not given the time to investigate like we are at Courier. Then there's the overarching, which is that a lot of our legacy media is owned by people who would be hurt from what's found in these. There's billionaires in there. There's Larry Ellison, the Murdochs. Their names may not be in there, but their friends are, and it's in their best interest if the general public doesn't find that out. Then there's the unfortunate case of people wanting to make money off of it. I mean, I'm sure as everyone or most people by now have heard about the New York Times explosive report that came out the other day about how the Trump administration was using the Situation Room and discussing Epstein and all this under background stuff. Well, it turns out they've been sitting on that information for over a year. And they only teased a portion of it because they saved it so they could write it in a book and sell it. And I have a lot of respect for the authors. I have a lot of respect for those journalists, but I don't think that's the proper way to document living history is by saving important information that could impact the way our world operates, so that you can sell a book a year later. I don't think that's appropriate.
Thanks, Cam. So just to jump back in here, you can see we've got results now, and you can see here we've got liquidity comparison for the Black Family Group hedge funds, lists their liquidity in terms of various funds. We have information about where the money is coming from, where it's going, summary tables. So a lot of these are like financial documents, which are interesting. We can see we've sourced it directly to the original source document. But as I look through this, what I see here is, a really large amount of money coming from, Apollo Technology Partners or Millennium Group. Let's say I don't know what Millennium Group is. I could say, let's go back to the database and then we'll search Millennium Group. And so in this way, we can sort of sort back and forth between, asking a question of the LLM, getting additional explanations, doing a deeper dive into a specific search term, going into the files, bookmarking it, and then we're building a corpus of evidence about a specific topic within the files. And so that's sort of one of the ways that we see people getting a lot of usage out of this tool.
Yeah, and any help we can get from the general public, like we've said, there's 3 million files so far. There's another 3 million that we expect eventually to come out, which means there's millions of stories, millions of threads, and it's impossible for any one person or even 100 people to find everything in there. And so if you're curious in your free time or whenever you have it, I'd love for you to check out the database, follow whatever interests you, and feel free to send us tips. My email is Cameron@couriernewsroom.com. I've gotten hundreds so far, and I've found so many useful things that I would never have thought to search through because people are passionate and want to find answers.
Great. Thank you so much, Josh and Cam. We really appreciate it. Ambassador Eisen has joined us. So there he is
Hello,
in
friends.
LA. Hello. You're in LA, but not in traffic.
I seem to have evaded the worst of the traffic. It is so great to be with you. I'm out here in California. It's the first of let's see, I was in court in Baltimore yesterday, LA, New York. So I'm on a 3-city tour with our over 308 cases and matters. But always have time as a BigTent frequent flyer to join my friends under the BigTent. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming back, Ambassador Eisen. We're thrilled to have you. We're going to make one of those, it's like SNL, the Five Timers Club, because I think it's your 7th time. So
wow.
I know. Anyway, so I'm going to turn the call over now to Cam, who's going to have a great discussion with Nina and Ambassador Eisen. We have a lot of questions that were submitted beforehand and during this call. So thanks to the 3 of you for talking about this incredibly important subject that we need to keep front and center until all these horrible people are held accountable, including the President of the United States. And with that, I'm going off camera.
I am pulling up my notes here real quick. Would Nina or Norm, would either of you like to kick it off and open things up for us?
Well, I have a question because I just decided to Google Ambassador Eisen's what he's been up to lately. And I noticed that there's literally a letter today sent by the Oversight Committee to you in which harassing you the way they're harassing. I mean, it looks like a setup to the basically renaming dissent as whatever that memo is, that executive memo about potential terrorism. They're asking him for all sorts of information about his operations and the things that he's been working on. It's incredible. And it literally is dated today. Am I right, Ambassador Eisen?
That is breaking news, Nina.
Yeah.
Because at Democracy Defenders Fund and Democracy Defenders Action, we've been so successful across our 308 legal matters and cases in exposing corruption. We get this kind of thing all the time. Donald Trump went to the Department of Justice last year, and in front of a room of hundreds of prosecutors and investigators for the federal government, said, everything I read is Norm Eisen. His sole mission in life is to get me. And incredibly, he said, he's doing a pretty good job. Elon Musk, because we went after Elon Musk and the Doge, filed multiple lawsuits. Elon Musk has tweeted about me and my family dozens of times. And now we have this latest letter. It comes in response to the work that we have done on our anti-corruption. As you may have seen, last week we had 2 of the biggest wins of pushing back against Trump's corruption 10 days ago. Number 1, we won the Kennedy Center case. Donald Trump's name must come off the Kennedy Center. And number 2, we had perhaps the most decisive legal blow against that $1.8 billion slush fund that Donald Trump established. It's kind of an endowment for insurrectionists and cop assaulters. We're very nonpartisan with a strongly bipartisan board. We represented 35 former federal judges appointed by presidents of both parties who got the court to open an investigation. Was this a fraud on the court? And it helped kill the slush fund. Those were the top 2 stories on the New York Times and the Washington Post when those 2 big anti-corruption corruption winds broke. So that kind of success breeds harassment, like this letter. As I tweeted today, it's a backhanded compliment, but we won't be deterred. We're going to keep on going. I'll say one last thing, Nina. The letter is interesting because it comes from our big push to combat Donald Trump's cronies, the Ellisons. You know, they want to do a merger of Paramount WBD that will put CNN under their wing. Well, if you like what they've done to CBS, you'll love what they're going to do to CNN. We're not going to allow that. And that has gone from a done deal to, after our work and our litigation in the United States and internationally, to now being seriously under threat. So the letter seems to be a response to that. As you can tell, I take it as a compliment, if a backhanded one, and we won't be deterred at all.
Nina, could you briefly lay out where you're at right now in your reporting of the Epstein story? You know, what's come to light, what you've been finding, and you know, with your researcher, Katie, with you, and what's hidden that you're trying to get your next big story on?
Well, we've been looking at the trafficking and the involvement of different I guess you would call them Johns, his friends, in that trafficking. And we're right now, well, Katie's the bloodhound, really, in the files, investigating what appears to be Leon Black's connection to the recruiters. He was often paying the recruiter women, because Epstein would bring these women in often from Russia, Europe, and then they were working for him. They will also call themselves victims, but they really were involved in the search for more female flesh. And Black it's turning out that Black is oddly connected with a lot of these recruiters. So we're working on that, and we have, I have a question actually for Ambassador Eisen about this tactic that we're taking, because our attitude towards the Epstein material is that, the more work we can do, the more evidence that we can find of interactions between Epstein and Trump, but also his cabinet members and his buddies, that eventually that's going to lead to something like a Watergate commission, or something that actually they're going to be looking into this if enough Republicans jump on. But I sometimes think that it's the corruption that's actually going to go in that direction. And so that's really, I mean, we're deep in the files. I can talk to you more about it. I write about it every single week. We've broken all kinds of stories about Epstein in the Middle East, and Epstein in his behaviors in New York, and Epstein in France, and everything. But basically, I wonder what you think about this, because you're working on, I know you're working in both areas, but what's your,
you're so nice to ask me the question. First of all, we admire the work and we rely on it. We often say we have multiple Epstein cases that we're litigating to unearth the files. And we often say that we fight this battle in the court of law, but also in the court of public opinion. And the two are connected, and you've been fueling that. We all rely on you. Thank you for that. I will say that I think of the Epstein scandal as also a corruption scandal. The classic definition of corruption, I'm sure I've said this before in one of my 7 appearances here under the Big Tent. The classic definition of corruption is the abuse of power in benefit powerful, the expense public, and the least powerful. And that is exactly what the Epstein story is about. You have Donald Trump, who was but story. Clearly, he's aware, on his comments in the infamous birthday book letter, his comments to New York Magazine. Then we know there's documents that his administration has refused to turn over. His handpicked crony, Todd Blanche. And worse than that, worse than covering for Donald Trump, they made a sweetheart deal with Ghislaine Maxwell, herself a terrible criminal abusing these women. And they moved her to a country club prison when she gave a unbelievable, implausible, dishonest deposition purporting to exonerate Trump. So it's until the slush fund case and with the Kennedy Center case, it's really one of those signature corruption scandals of abusing power, whether it's to take money or to appropriate a priceless memorial to a slain president, to himself, or to use government power to protect the Trump Epstein files and continue the cover-up, and just devastating to the victims. It's all one big corruption story. And that's why these three stories have broken through. The American people hate corruption.
Pam, do you want to jump in? I have some other thoughts, but
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the reasons why it is a story that really resonates with people. Why this Epstein's, because it's not just human trafficking. It's an international multi-billion-dollar criminal enterprise that touches the highest reaches of our government. And it's something that has been essentially laid bare for all of us to see. And yet the government refuses to do anything about it. It's corruption in its purest and most disgusting form. But that's why it's so important for us to continue looking, continue digging. I know I've seen a lot of questions about, what are we doing with this information? What are we doing with this reporting? Right now, I see what we're doing is laying out a case of sorts. Right now, like I said, we have Republicans who control Congress. We have Trump in the White House. None of them seem too eager to do anything on this. But their positions aren't forever. Eventually there will be other leadership in Congress. Democrats could take over the House. They could retake the Senate. And it's our responsibility now to put the pressure on them to get them to commit to do things when they take power so that they actually do it. We had 4 years under a Biden administration where it took a year for them to start investigating Trump. By the time they got one conviction out of him, he had been reelected president. It took too long. It was too slow. And so now we have the opportunity to uproot and expose this corruption, get people who are in Congress to commit to do something about it. And then when they are in power, make sure that they do. Now, Nina, I'd like to toss it back to you. Nina has been investigating and she's done so much work looking at the women in Trump's life, and by extension, the women and girls in Epstein's life, and has really been able to dive into the stories and horrors of the people who are caught in his web. So I'm curious, as you've been delving more into the files, what has most surprised you, or what has been the most revealing about Epstein's network and the extent of the government's knowledge about its operations that maybe you didn't know before this recent batch of the files were released?
Well, I didn't know any of this stuff. I mean, my book was about the Trump women, the members of his family, and Melania and the wives, and that book really is about his relationships with women around him. But the bottom line, that the takeaway from that book is that he and Melania model this transactional relationship between men and women that is ascendant to the point that you now have, as I was just in Texas with the TPUSA Women's Summit, where you now have major female leaders, Huckabee, Sanders, McEnany, Erica Kirk, and many men on the right openly advocating for, submission to the husband and one family, one vote. And these are things that you would never have heard outside of these swamps. But to me, the Epstein files is in the most sort of meta looking at in its entirety without the specifics. What you understand is that even throughout the decade, let's say since 2000, Obama years and on, W Obama onward, you had this sort of movement of like female empowerment and girl bosses and Sheryl Sandberg hosting these, the lean in stuff. And you have a lot of women entering law firms like Kathy Rumler, who we could talk about. The Times story is amazing today. And so there was this sense of like progress being made, but there was also this weird undertow. And that I think the Epstein files really reveal what that undertow is, which is that these powerful guys underneath it all were literally, they have such scorn and contempt for females. They do not recognize our humanity, and they're trading these women around. And so you could be a Kathy Rumler and sitting in a room with the board with Leon Black across from you and all these other guys. You're maybe the only woman in the room, or you're one of 10, and maybe even more, because a lot of women have entered these law firms. But the power dynamic between the powerful men and women who thought they had power was always undermined by this dark, sickening undertow. And to me, that's the takeaway from this. And at 50 years from now, if there is justice done, this will be looked back at in that sense, and many other ways too. But it really has to do with the power dynamic between men and women, and the backsliding that Trump has inaugurated for women is so dramatic. And this is what the Epstein files, to me, is about in the broadest sense.
And what do you think, just to kind of continue on with that, because people have known, or people have caught on to the salacious horrors of Epstein's web for a long time, and there have been no consequences. Do you think that following the money trail would be a more effective way to get justice for these women? Do you think it's a way that we can actually pin some of these wealthy people to these crimes, or is it just another dead end?
No, I mean, I don't. Again, I mean, Beth Eisen, and you're a lawyer, and I'm not, and I don't understand how the Justice Department is making these decisions. As you pointed out earlier, they made this very narrow description of what a crime is. But the stuff that we're pulling up is showing that, again, like a Leon Black was financing this stuff, and Donald Trump is involved with his modeling, the trafficking of women, which is part of their modeling agency. He was operating with all these other model agents. Paolo Zampoli, who we haven't even mentioned yet tonight, is his ambassador, his global ambassador, cutting deals in huge billion-dollar deals. Paolo Zampoli was a trafficker. I mean, he was moving women around in and out of New York. People in Italy will tell you what they think he was doing there, what he was doing in Ibiza, who he was engaged with in Ibiza. And is this all going to come out? Are people going to call them out? I don't know. I mean, you follow the money. I think, again, that leads you to the corruption, but I don't know if that becomes the way that we're going to take them down.
Yeah. No. Norm, please.
And I think that follow the money mantra. I can't believe I'm lucky enough to call the legendary John Dean a friend and a colleague. And of course, he made what was wrong right by being the Nixon follow the money whistleblower. When you follow the money trails here, you see a larger pattern of financial corruption. It is not just the still only partially revealed Epstein money trails and the questions that they raise about those, like Mr. Zampoli, who are in Trump's world. But I think we have to take one step broader, because this entire administration has been turned into a cash cow for the Trumps. And that is not, when you follow the money, you find taxpayer money going to their and their cronies' pockets. And that is not the American idea. It is a part of a piece with this corruption. One of the other stories, I'm often on Nicole Wallace, and one of the other stories that Nicole and I have covered is the Trump stock trades. We've never seen a president engaging in these kinds of stock trades. So we have to follow that corrupt money trail as well, or the crypto corruption. We do a lot of work on unearthing and litigating Trump's unholy crypto connections. Hundreds of millions, likely billions of dollars have flowed into his and his family's and their allies and cronies' pockets, including from the Middle East. That story of corruption has to be told. The Epstein story will be looked back on in history as the signature corruption scandal of this administration. But I do think these other corruption stories, these money flows, the Kennedy Center, the slush fund, are a part of a picture. The American people are waking up to that. And now you're seeing, as with Nixon, you're seeing Donald Trump at historically low unpopularity because they don't like it. And before we finish, we should say a word about the coming, and it's already here, attempts to corrupt the election. That's very, very important as well.
Yes, I was trying to think of a good way to transition to that. So you nailed it, Ambassador. Could you actually talk a little bit about what you're seeing from your perspective, litigiously, what the administration is trying to do and what people can do, or what people expect organizations like yours to do to stop that corruption before it's too late?
Yeah, we at Democracy Defenders Fund, and I've come to talk to you about my wonderful organizations that I've started before when I visited with you. I love them, and I still work with them all the time. Crew, States United. At Democracy Defenders Fund, we started our organization to focus on three things. Number one, we wanted to make sure that the rule of law was protected. That's why we've done, for example, we've defended Dr. Lisa Cook, the Fed governor. We're about to, I think, be successful in that case in the Supreme Court. Birthright citizenship, we're about to win that case in the Supreme Court. Number two, to fight corruption. We've talked about that. But number three, to provide additional scope, scale, and speed to protect elections and complement the amazing work. So it turns out, for example, that there's nobody who was specializing in protecting counties when they are targeted with Donald Trump's election subversion. We're very honored. We represent Fulton County, other counties. I can't say too much about what I'm doing here in LA, but we're working around the country on these issues. You may remember in Fulton, there's been an effort to seize ballots to get the names of every election worker. We moved to quash that demand for names. We've tied it up. It's wrong. It's illegal. I just filed another brief in that case. So we're very busy on fighting the attempted corruption of elections. And I think we're going to see another place where I can talk about this in Los Angeles. I've been honored to represent City of Los Angeles fighting the National Guard and ICE, and to including all the way up to the representing municipalities all the way up to the Supreme Court. We won that National Guard case in the Supreme Court. The the municipalities who were litigating it there. So, and we were pleased to support some of those municipalities. So we are ready if Donald Trump tries to seize voting equipment, to criminally investigate election officials, to deploy ICE or the National Guard to affect elections. Those are the corruption of the election process. And we're up to that. And if you're interested in supporting Democracy Defenders Fund, just Google us. We have our blue link on our homepage for Democracy Defenders Fund. Back to you, Cameron.
Excellent.
I
thank you
popped
both.
on, Cam, because I just wanted to, at BigTent, we really appreciate and need calls to action. And we've been putting links in the chat for Democracy Defenders and Courier and your Substacks and the many ways that you guys help keep Americans informed, engaged, involved, hopeful, all these things that are so important with your reporting and your legal work. So I just wanted to end tonight to have each one of you sort of talk about the midterms are coming up. There's going to be a lot of things that happen between now and then. But and Cam, if it's okay, I'll start with you. But one of the things that you're doing in your reporting that you want us to sort of keep in the back of our minds, make sure that we share when you're reporting. I hope everyone follows Cam. So I just would love to hear what you're thinking. Then I'll turn it to Nina, and then I'll turn it to Ambassador Eisen to close us out. And what you want all of us to be doing.
Yeah, of course. I feel that over the course of the past year and a half, my different reporting coverage, because I've cover the Trump administration, I cover the White House, I have a long history of covering immigration rights, and of course, I've delved pretty deep into the Epstein files. But I really believe it all comes back to corruption. And whether it's how the government is hiding this massive scandal of what is going on, or what was going on when Epstein was running his operation, or how the administration has been able to essentially turn concentration camps into a publicly subsidized business so that private prison companies and Trump supporters could get jobs as ICE agents and make money off of all of this. I think it's important to not lose sight of why this is being done. It's to divide us. It's to keep people scared and to keep people feeling hopeless. All of my journalism, I try to have it be service oriented in the sense that I want to give people something they can do with the information, whether it's call a representative, because they do check their calls, they track who's calling, what they're being told, and they do vote based on what their constituents are telling them. Whether it's, attend a rally, a lot of times, I'm trying to get information out to as many people as I can. And so any help I can get with getting my stories shared, whether it's on Substack or TikTok or Instagram, information is the antidote to fear. And the way that we can help people to feel hope and give people direction and guidance, no matter what the issue of the day is, no matter what's coming out of the Trump fire hose, is to spread information and give people something that they can do with it. And so that would be my ask, is to stay informed, take care of yourself mentally. It can become very overwhelming, but help other people to get the good information as well.
That's great. Thanks, Cam. And we've been sharing your incredible map with, where all the ICE, the mega centers are, the warehouses, and also the smaller ones with the BigTent community, and we'll continue to do that. So thank you for that. Nina, tell us what you're going to be doing, watching, paying attention to, and what you think we all should be watching, doing, and paying attention to.
Well, I started the Freakshow 3 years ago after reading about Clarence Thomas's benefactor, Harlan Crow's Nazi table linens collection. I was sitting at the table in the kitchen upstate, and I thought, these people are absolute freaks. And somebody should do a podcast called The American Freak Show. And then I thought, I should do that. And I started the Substack. And the whole point of it is to remind people that this is to keep eyes on the fact that this is not normal, and that we can get our way back to normal if we keep our eyes on this game that they're playing. And if we're supported and supporting people like Ambassador Eisen, the democracy defenders, and these other operations that are going to the courts, because that is a last resort, and of course the elections, but keeping them supported, because what I find from my readers is that they feel soothed by my revulsion and the way that it's funny. So I make fun of these people, but it's not enough. You have to go to these courts and start the process. And what's happening is, as you just heard, you're listening to Ambassador Eisen, is that these cases move very slowly through the system. But then all of a sudden you'll see, oh wait, there are some depositions of those weird guys that Musk put into the, remember that nobody even knew that the Humanities Council was suing them. So these things are slowly moving through, and I just think, people need to not lose hope. And remember that, it doesn't look like there are any sheepdogs left in the DOJ, but we do have people working for us, and we're keeping eyes on this all the time. And I'm optimistic that we get on the other side of it. But obviously the one thing that has to happen is there has to be accountability. There cannot be, if the Democrats come in, our long national nightmare is behind us, which is what's been done so many times with Obama and the Iraq War and Biden. It cannot happen. They have to set up committees and go through it inch by inch and make sure that, I'm glad Ambassador Eisen mentioned the crypto stuff, and the just avalanche of financial corruption that's going on here. It's a blitzkrieg of corruption, and it's going to have to be picked apart, and it's a massive job, but it will be done.
Yeah, and you're setting up a potential oversight committee. All three of you, and the work that you're doing, your organizations are doing, are setting up a potentially democratic, pro-democracy oversight committee with the information they need in order to do that. Okay, Ambassador Eisen, you get to close us out tonight,
Lovely.
You're really good at that. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, I'm just reflecting after having had this wonderful conversation with Cam and Nina, and I caught some of the tail end of the opening presentation about the data set. I'm reflecting on the distance we've traveled here at the Big Tent over the course of my 7 appearances, particularly some of the ones over the past almost a year and a half since the Trump administration took office. And it was so dire on January 20th. We talked not long after that, I believe. But then you started to see sparks of hope struck by the legal cases, our 308 cases and matters, our wonderful colleagues and coalitions work, but then by the mobilization, the No Kings, and by press coverage, like the press coverage of the Epstein scandal. And then the political leaders started standing up. They saw the people were behind it. And now we see an acceleration of this energy to combat democratic backsliding. And whenever I'm with you, it's an opportunity for me to mark what direction are we headed in. And I think it's a direction of progress. And if we all still stick with it, by my 8th, 9th, or 10th visit, we'll have American democracy starting to come back. All right, they're coming to get me. I'm going to head out. Thank you for being so patient, Big Tenters, with my schedule vicissitudes. It's great to be with you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Eisen. And everyone on this call, thank you so much for joining Big Tent tonight. Hope to see you next week with Evan Osnos. Nina and Cam, we're so lucky to have you. Josh, if you're still here, we thank you for using AI and maybe the most inspiring way that we've heard thus far in our journey with AI, and hope to see you all under the Big Tent. Cam and Nina, keep doing that good work. We'll be following you and promoting your work, and everyone have a great night.
Thank you. Thanks, Kitty, and thanks everyone for taking the time.
Bye, everybody.